Did you ever wish you had a simple method to just sort of smash together very quickly as possible, different spaceship designs or different curved industrial designs just to stand in as props or perhaps to inspire your imagination to go a little farther with something? But pre-visualizing as many things as possible with as many variations as possible is something that this video is all about. I recorded an awful lot of video, and what I'm going to be doing mostly is voiceover on top of that video. What you're seeing now are some of the finished examples. There's a technique that I think you're going to like, and if you enjoyed displacing and you're able to use almost any version of Blender to get these results, this would be the video for you. Get ready. Hello. Hi. Hola, my handle and my greeting. Let's get into 2.79, and there are things that even earlier versions could do, but right now with quick prototyping, we're going to pretend that someone has asked us to design a series of spaceships. One thing that will help with quick prototyping is if you have some sort of material that will stop them from trying to understand clay. This texture, which I'll show you in a moment, uses a combination of a UV map, which I just simply used Smart Unwrap to create. So pretty much no work. Remember, quick prototype. The last computer I was using did not have a monitor as good as what I'm using right now. But for a moment, think about the shape. This shape was generated using, dare I say, almost no thought whatsoever. I can't show you how it started, but it's a squat little flying penguin of a spaceship, or maybe it's two ships, one carrying the other. Doesn't matter. When we create a prototype, we're not really concerned so much with some of the details because we just want to block out the basic idea. And so, let's do one. Make sure that your add-ons resemble a little bit like this. I'm not using this, I'm not using this, and I'm not using this. So it might be hiding under extra objects there. Shift a rounded cube. Press the letter T and you will have access here to just what goes on with that rounded cube. Right now it's 4 square polygons per side. I'd like 8. So I'm just going to click the arc until it gets to 8. And now I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to select 4 up front and control plus my way halfway back. This is an interesting thing because under the Object Data tab I can create a new vertex group, and I'm inclined to call this vertex group front. I will assign my current vertices with a weight of 1 to front. I'll hit Control I and invert my selection. I'll create a new group and I'll call it rear. I will assign the current ones to rear. I'll switch to edges and select just this center edge. I will set my weight to 0.5. I will assign that weight as they appear both to the rear and to the front. Now, if I did that correctly, it should look like this. Then again, if you did it correctly, it should look like this. So we're going to be tugging and pulling the front and the rear of our prototype. And in the middle, it's going to be it's going to be taking it easy. It's not going to be tugged and pulled so hard. So Control Tab to get back into object mode from what we were just looking at, which was weight paint mode. And something else that I like is symmetry. Some people aren't big fans of symmetry. That's okay. I happen to be, and for this little video we're going to be doing symmetry since I'm in charge. I'll be selecting half of the ones on a -X and hitting XF to delete those faces. I will tab out. Now, I'll begin looking at modifiers, just as it is right now. And remember, it's in the center. I've not moved it out of origin. And I might as well name it. Hit the letter N, and instead of roundcube.001, how about something hot like O2? Modifier. Let us displace. Let us create a name for that displace that is called front. Let us use the vertex group front and change the mid-level to 1, to 0. Let's make a new modifier. How about displace? And it comes in underneath. Let's make a new texture called rear. Let's use the vertex group rear, and now let's make the mid-level 0. Good, man, good. So nothing changed. That's okay. We're happy with that. Let us mirror it, because I just said that I like mirrors. It defaults to the x-axis. Yours may be the y, maybe the z. Don't be afraid to figure out which it is. If I do the y, it doesn't make any sense, and you can't see it anyway. I'm going to enable clipping on that one. And then, of course, we got to have things smooth, right? So subdivision of surfaces 2. I did it in this order because I will displace with this modifier not along the normal, but along the direction of travel, the y. I'm going to show you later what happens if we don't do that. It bugs me, it may not bug you. Let's deal with the front. Okay? So, simple, right? We have our new texture. Let's go see what it is by clicking this button. It's an image or a movie. Well, forget that. And for the sake of expediency, I'm just going to choose magic. Our magic depth is sinking through because, and I'm going to remember this, it's sinking through, because I was right, because the mid-level should be 1. Ha! You thought I was wrong earlier and made a mistake. I wasn't wrong. I was just not finished being right. So I'm also going to do magic for the back, and it is also surprising me by being the same. So, yep, that's what we want. Okay, let's get this stuff pulled. Now, texture coordinates. I do have it mirrored. See how it's mirrored? See that spaceship? Yeah, hardly. What I can do for the front is use texture coordinates, and I've named this empty front finder. I've named this empty rear finder, which is sounds like a pal at the beach. Now I'm going to use the object front finder to help me take care of the front end, and I'm going to use the object rear finder to help me take care of the back of the ship, arguably the business end. And so now we can, under Tool, enable some smoothing if you're annoyed by all those facets. I'm not, but you do what's right for you. So now, this looks really basic because it is. We can move this around and choose different things, and we can scale it up and get smaller bumps in our mesh, and we can scale it down and get larger. We can rotate on the X or the Y or the Z, and it begins to take on different shapes. And somewhere in there, you know, that might actually be a good rear. Somewhere in there, I promise, is lurking something like a shuttlecraft or some sort of vehicle that looks aerodynamic and has wings. And so we've already got our modifiers taken care of, so why don't we just sort of keep tinkering around with this? And if I move it away on the Y, it still has an effect. So don't go crazy. Just take it easy. Take a look at some of the shapes that it's presenting you. Now, if the back looks like this, I think I want the front to be narrow. So I'm going to hit SX and compress everything that's up front. And I'll see what happens if I pull it out this way. Not much. And if I do the Y, it does begin to get tall and long. But now I've kind of got a little bit of a stopping point, don't I? I mean, there's only so much that we can do like this. So changing some of the underlying geometry is the second part of this trick. If you tab in and you haven't enabled the view of modifiers in edit mode, you can surprise yourself by picking out a couple of faces here. I said that was the back, huh? And so what if I did all the way through to the front. Those. And if I just hit extrude, and I come out a little bit, and then control space, and then using some normal coordinates and control space to show that widget, if I hit GZZ, oh, I still have my soft proportional editing on too, GZZ, it lets me kind of bring some of those already established polygons out. Control space, I grab them a little bit more, and then GZZ, I go again in the direction of the wings. And now control minus, 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 and I have just a little bits right there. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't manipulate those into some short, stocky wings. I only have to go sideways because we're letting displace handle the forward and backward. And so certainly displace has handled the forward and backward, and it has stretched our wings a great deal. So I think I'm going to scale this down on the Y, and I think I might even lower it just to see what happens. I'll lower it a little bit and then hit Control plus and lower that. Control plus sort of uses your selection as a starting point for climbing outward. Oh yeah, that was a good back. Look at that. That's not bad. That's not bad. Rapid prototyping, right? Let's just hurry this up. There they are. Okay, so some stabilizers that are laughable. Look at, I love doing this, by the way, and so I really just keep kind of tinkering with it until I have exhausted some of my desires. Here's something to remember. Somewhere in here is a halfway point that we created with this. Look at that. Our halfway point is really stretching out like crazy, which is probably why I'm having such a hard time pointing that wing. And when we are in edit mode and we grab an edge that goes along through that halfway point, we can do something to affect either the front or the rear. And in this case, I want to... Ooh, that's a tough one. I want to affect the front. So I will deselect any of that stuff that's in the rear. And I got it backwards because I seem to be building the ship backwards. That's something that might help you as you tinker around and try and decide what you want to design and what shape it should be. So I'm going to come in there, and I'm going to make it bigger and come in a little bit more and see what that does. And now I have sculpted a front end. So this sculpting on the base model is one thing, but we still have this to contend with. And so one final note about this, let me see if I can get, oh, look at that nose. Yeah, that's fierce, man. I believe spaceship travel of now and the future is primarily going to be scientists, and there won't be a need for extremely aggressive ships, but everybody loves extremely aggressive ships, and so we're aiming more for a bird skull, gun, pointy thing. I can change the way, I was smart just a moment ago, I can change the way the texture affects what's going on, how many octaves or how much depth or how many levels are there, and also how much turbulence is there. You can enable the map, the ramp, and begin to clip things down and forward. This is clipping the white so that everything hops up to some of its maximums as quickly as possible. going to take a look at it in the way that a lot of previs ships are viewed. You see how it has this sort of angle? Did you know that when you press the mouse wheel and, orbit your view, you can hold down the Alt button and it snaps like overhead, front, right. It also snaps in other degrees, like halfway between front, right, and overhead, or a third of the way, or something. And the reason I kind of enjoy this is because sometimes on the internet, when you look at things, people present their spaceship design ideas from that weird sort of three-quarter view, looking overhead or underhead. So, here is a ship. I have not unwrapped it. I'm going to tab in. I'm going to think if I want to do that mirror or not. Let's just hit U and Smart UV Project and see what happens. I'm saying yes to the default, and what happens, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is this, and it's pretty intelligent about picking out flat areas like the wing and leaving that top surface and that bottom surface in. As I'm moving along here, I just wanted to give you some idea of things I'm doing. I find myself repeating again and again just to make the process a little bit better and to make things happen with a little bit more control, so there's a little less surprise and a little bit more happiness on my part. And I've decided to ditch that other thing and just use the that wax render you just saw. So this is one guy that I just finished up, and I found that I had created some extra things on the bottom, and I didn't like those. And I had these, and they were producing sort of like skis on the bottom, and so they were completely missing, and that was a row of 2x3 faces. And if you see something like this, you can switch to edit mode and Alt right-click select the loop that you just made. And instead of just hitting F, which creates one face with multiple edges, you can hit Control F and grid fill that face, and it will basically restore the 2x3, in this case, that it came from, which is a lifesaver because these quads are what work best with the modifier of subsurface, which brings me to another thing. I found that this particular model was squeezing a whole bunch, and I wanted to undo some of that squeezing, and so I had shifted to faces and enabled the edit mode for the front and for the rear. And that helped to unpinch while I was still working on it. And you can see that basically what I'm looking at is, it looks like a bunch of hats to me, layered on top of each other. But the funny thing is that the front end uses the wood texture in the Textures tab. And so by switching, I can show you it's using just a ring of wood. And when I enable that in edit mode, it has a huge effect. But what's funny is that even cheating and looking at this stuff, when I take some of these and I move them, because it's wood, moving front doesn't always move front. Sometimes it hits that wood texture that's floating through 3D space and moves backwards and forwards, and it's very kind of unexpected. So I continue to plug away at different ships here, and I've just finalized something. Earlier I mentioned that there might be some way of getting rid of wrinkles like this that you see here. There's a lot of nice flow in this one, right? I really worked at it too. Just trying to get the idea of a silhouette in the sky, which is why it was such fun to take a look at some of these things from far away, just to see if they have any interesting look that makes them more identifiable than anything else. And this one is okay. It's very slick. It's very smooth. But I've got this fold. And I'm going to circle select these. I'm going to circle select this group here. Just sort of gather that up and make it bigger by rolling my mouse wheel back. I'm going to tap out, undo this magic see-through button, and then with a mouse wheel, deselect certain vertices that don't appear to be part of the problem. Certainly nothing down here is part of the problem. So I can circle select with the mouse wheel and just get them out. Shift right click select. So my symmetry is on, my displacement has been applied. I accidentally ended up with a little windshield on this one, so I'm keeping it. I didn't mean to, it's just the way it went. So I'm going to create a new vertex group, and I'm going to assign this a full value, and I'm going to call it, what is that called? Corrective smooth. So I'm going to call it corrective smooth, like that. I'm going to assign those verts to it. Now, I'm going to go back into the modifier tab, and here it is. I had to move it up to the top, because when you create it after you're done, it had complained, it had complained in object mode that the vertex count was a mismatch. I used this arrow, put it to the top, and there was no more error. I had looked at the ship and thought, okay, cool. Nothing really happened. So I'm going to pick Core Smooth here. I'm going to keep an eye on my vertex group. And reset. Ooh, bind chords or original chords. Well, the default is original, so okay. That, oh, look at this. Yes. Original factor of 0.5 and a repeat of 2 seems to get that wrinkle out. So that is how that part goes. And the rest, of course, I'm still working on with this fantastic weird wax material that I have made just to amuse myself. I'm going to apply this, and it seems that nothing went wrong. And they each have something to contribute, some part good, some part bad, and it would be up to you and a designer to figure out what's good at the front, what's good at the back. Some of these shapes, like this one, was kind of inspired by, Batman-esque. The wing shape is really attractive to me. The diminishing fuselage is kind of interesting to me. And this one here was based a little bit on a bull. So there's the horns up front, they kind of sweep, and there's a little bit of a nostril that I found in some of the distortion that I was using, inspired by petals on a flower, if you will. And I let it wrap one after another, and fortunately it was the distortion I was using that allowed for that kind of shape. Like this one is fairly organic and has a backpack and has a big round front section where perhaps a pilot could sit or stand and get a good view and be protected on the sides by these hull parts. Here's a render with the material I finally ended up with. That material was a lighter version, and I used a bump map to create diagonal hull plates here because everyone sort of expects to see hull plates. There's some commonalities from one to the next because they all share the same material. There is a website out there, and it's called ship.shapebright.com, and it will put together a real big basic ship for you that you can cruise around and zoom in and zoom out from and take a look at some of the details, you can add a name like hello, hi, hola, and say build it. And it will use that as sort of a random seed to generate whatever spaceship. There's also a way to export that spaceship and use it in Blender. There are also things like the spaceship generator. The spaceship generator has some ideas where you can put together different ships based on seeds, but they all tend to look a bit like corridors turned inside out, in my opinion. Doing these 9, each one was about 15 to 20 minutes. So 9, I've spent 3 hours doing just this, at most 3 hours, and then messing around with the material. So it's easy to see why I've hacked in some voiceover and edited some very peculiar overlays and images from throughout those 3 hours as I came up with something new and wanted to tell you all about it. I love this process. I hope that it helps you succeed in something that you are doing, whether it's spaceships or anything else. And I'm really glad to have you watching this video. If you have comments, suggestions, or ideas, feel free. Leave them on the video. Thanks for watching.